I'm going to speak very specifically about the vacate applications, and there may be other questions about other immigration issues afterwards, but let me speak to the vacates. I've been practicing, as stated, for 33 years in the immigration world, and I never even heard of a vacate application for my first 20 years. I had a couple of them with Afghans who had come to the country and had been here for 5, 6, 7 years, accepted, and it turned out that they had status in a European country like Holland. They were citizens and they'd come here and they'd claim refugee status in Canada because most of their family was here and they just thought it would be better in Canada than in Holland or in Finland or in Sweden or whatever. And those cases were really the only ones that came up. And then suddenly in 2020 there was an onslaught of vacate applications. I think hundreds of people in the Somali community were served with these vacate applications, and they were all based on photo matches. I mean, that's the fundamental thing behind it all. And it's very difficult to fight these cases. In some cases, the photo match is just perfect because the person has a scar, they have a certain tuft of beard that's identical in both photographs. So there's nothing really you can do except accept that that the photos are the same, the person is one and the same, and yes, they used a Kenyan passport to come to Canada. But you can't argue that they just used the Kenyan passport to come to Canada, and if we look deeper into this situation, we'll see that they really are Somali. And the reason why you can't is that what the government lawyers, what CBSA must establish to achieve a vacate, is they must establish that the person withheld some relevant piece of information. And it's written in the handbook on criteria for looking at refugee cases that a passport is considered prima facie to be proof of citizenship. And it's also been decided in several federal court decisions that a passport prima facie establishes citizenship. And those were really favoring people in trying to say, yes, if they have a passport, that's enough, they don't have to have more than that. But it's been turned against the Somalis because Somalis, of course, didn't have passports. And even the rare people who did have a passport, it's very hard to travel the world on a Somali passport. So over the last 30 years, somewhere around 80,000 Somalis have migrated to Toronto, and I doubt even 5% of them came on bona fide Somali passports. They came on Kenyan passports, they came sometimes on Australian passports, whatever. And if they arrived in the country and they said, here's the Kenyan passport I traveled with, then they can argue that it's a fake passport, it's not a real passport. But on a vacate, they can't even argue that because you're not allowed to submit additional evidence. Now, this clause was not put into the Immigration Act specifically to attack Somalis. It's been here for a long time. It just didn't have much action until just recently because of what I believe are the photo matches, where it all starts from. And I have been continuously submitting documentation and trying to suggest that CBSA is using photo matching, and the Privacy Commissioner of Canada has stood up against photo matching, but primarily in relation, I shouldn't say primarily, only in relation to criminal law. And the reason for that is that photo matching has been used in criminal law where there's CTV cameras everywhere these days. And so the police will look at these cameras and they'll try to establish who was in the area at the time when a crime was committed. And the attitude of the courts towards it is that this is too much Big Brother looking down on us from everywhere. But nobody's really looked at the situation. The Privacy Commissioner hasn't. I wrote to the Privacy Commissioner and said CBSA is using photo matching and you should be doing something about this. And they wrote back, we haven't looked at this matter, we'd be interested if you have any proof or evidence. Well, that's what the courts say to me as well. Do you have proof that they're using photo matching? I don't have any proof. I'm not on the inside of CBSA, and nobody's admitting it. And CBSA legal officers, legal counsel that appear in the cases repeatedly tell the courts that I'm an officer in the court, and I'll tell you that we are not using photo matching. That has shifted recently to, we did not use photo matching in this particular case. I don't quite understand the subtlety that they're bringing out there, but they're, again, denying that the photo match is the cause of all this. So, I guess taking it a step further, I think that my own view of this, and again, it's my view, it's not, I don't have proof of everything, but I think that the CBSA officers know that most of these people are Somalis that have been using Kenyan passports. But they try to get, and once the person has been found to be one and the same as the Kenyan person, they say he's a Kenyan. And so if they get a deportation order, it's to the Kenyan name and to be deported to Kenya, even though they are Somalis. And I can't say in all cases, I don't know, but I think in 90% of the cases at least, they are Somalis. And I'm encouraging them to get Somali passports, which it's possible to do now from the Somali passport office in Mogadishu. They'll do an online interview and so on, and they'll work with someone who's a guarantor in Somali for the person. And so we're trying to use this now to try to assist people on pre-risk removal applications and on spousal sponsorships, because we have cases where a person has been a permanent resident, they've married, they've got 2 kids, and their status is being stripped of them, so they have no status now, so we're using the spousal sponsorship to try to keep them here. It's all early times in this, and I don't know where it's all going. I'm hopeful that we're going to succeed on some of the pre-risk removal applications, and I'm also hopeful that we'll succeed on the spousal sponsorships. We also have cases going to the federal court where we're arguing that the photo matching, which has been condemned by the UNHCR, by the Privacy Commissioner, by the American Congress even, who has put forth that photo matching is basically racially biased, in that you're far more likely to get a false positive with a person of color than you are with white people. I don't understand that completely, but that's what they found in terms of the evidence. So there's a lot of negatives about this. A short ray of hope, we do have one federal court decision that came down just recently, and it involved a case where a person was found to, he was vacated by the Refugee Appeal Division, and the Refugee Appeal Division just simply stated that their examination of the photos left them in a position where they had no doubt that they were one and the same person. And they didn't take into consideration the evidence that had been submitted by the person concerned, who pointed out several differences between his photo and the photo of the person he was alleged to be. And the court, the RAD did not address this properly and did not specifically say why they thought they were one and the same person, like give the details. Their nose is exactly the same, they've got the same little tuft of beard, they got a scar over their left eye or whatever. They just said they are one and the same person. So that's a little ray of hope within all of this, but, and I have a couple of cases coming before the federal court before long, and who knows what will happen with them. So it's a battle, and we're trying. I will also mention one other issue that has affected Somalis a lot recently, and that is the Kenyan driver's license thing, which has become a bit of a fiasco for Somalis. And the Ontario Human Rights Commission actually looked at this issue in relation to a Syrian rather than a Somali, but the same principle applies. It's countries where the government will not accept a driving license or driving experience. And so the people, they arrive here, they don't speak English, they want to work, they want to drive Uber, and the only way they can get that fast is by getting a driving license, and it'll take them, if they follow the proper course of action, over a year. I think it's almost 2 years actually, but so they get the license, a fake license from Somalia, and then I think it's probably from photo matching again. It's matched up with the fact that they've got this Kenyan license and so on, and then it's argued, well, they must be a national of Kenya to have a Kenyan driver's license, or it's saying that the person must have spent time in Kenya to have a Kenyan driver's license. Or they've just used false documentation which proves that they're a liar and they're no good, so we should, you know, throw the refugee claim. And I think recently the Ontario government or the Ministry of Transport has become so used to these Kenyan licenses they've started to refuse them. And that's a good thing for Somalis actually, because now they can't be accused of doing this because it didn't go the full distance. But having said that, the Ontario Human Rights Commission ruled in the Syrian case that it is it's contrary to the Human Rights Code because they're taking away the ability of someone who has a license and knew how to drive in the country that they came from, and they are being restricted from driving in Ontario for a couple of years as a consequence of that law. I'm happy when everybody's finished if there's any questions about any of this to answer.